Well, good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. My name's Dan Pearl, and I head up the payments processing and IT services practice here at RBC. And I'm delighted to be joined by two colleagues. Oftentimes, it's not a colleague, it's another company, but in this case, we get to showcase our internal talent, so I'm super excited. To my left, I have Susam Ghosh, who is the head of Global Quantitative Sales, Trading, and Strategic Initiatives within the DSCI group. And then we have Hasham Barani, who is the co-head of Algorithmic Research. So with those titles, the IQ clearly went up in this room quite a bit. So for level setting purposes, since it's a lot of people in here that may not be familiar with what AIDN is, if you wouldn't mind, either one of you just defining it, but in simple terms. Let's distill this down into usable sound bites.
Sure. So very simply put, AIDN is a platform that uses deep neural network reinforcement learning, where the idea is to build different algorithms on this platform that are to achieve the most optimal price from an execution standpoint vis-a-vis the benchmark that we're solving for. So I know that's a mouthful, but to simplify that further, we'll use an example. One of the key benchmarks used in the industry is VWAP, which is volume weighted average price. Sure. So we built our first algo on this platform, which was VWAP, and the idea was to achieve, if not, be able to outperform the market volume weighted average price benchmark. So awesome. that would be the simplest way I can think of putting it.
That's fantastic. Let's put some kind of historical context around this. This started obviously several years ago, and I'm wondering as RBC was going through this process and looking at all the AI opportunities that were available, why did we land on this one? Why is it important, to the firm today? And just anything you can tell us about how that developed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great question, Dan. So we looked at many applications in AI to apply to our specific problem. And especially at the time, when we talk about reinforcement learning, it wasn't necessarily a mainstream idea. We're talking late 2016, early 2017. Mm-hmm. This is around the time where deep reinforcement learning was being applied at DeepMind in the game of chess and the game of Go. And so we looked at that essentially, and we saw that these models were able to make strategic decisions multiple moves ahead. And we saw that they're able to sacrifice make a short-term sacrifice and essentially balance that with a strategic advantage in the future and potentially make a gain further into the future. So we looked at that and we felt very comfortable to say we can essentially create something that would catapult us into a position where we can create something very innovative for our clients. So that's essentially one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is that reinforcement learning was a perfect fit for what we're trying to do, right? So in reinforcement learning, the outcome of the model is considered as well, aside from the decision that it makes. And so looking at that, all of a sudden now, we looked at the market that we're essentially trying to solve for. The live market is constantly changing. And so we thought, instead of fitting a model on a historical basis, right, which essentially, if you imagine data collected on a market that's not outdated, can I build a model that can adapt real time on the actual market? So reinforcement learning gave us exactly that, and no other AI system would have been able to give us that.
Along with that, then, I just wanted to add, I think the other things that we learned pretty early on, first off, it was new, it was different, right? So we wanted to prove ourselves to our clients, and which is why we chose VWAP as our proof point. But then we also, pretty quickly realized at the end of the day, we're doing it for them. So what is their biggest challenge that we need to solve for? So there was a pretty significant feedback loop from our clients that then, allowed us to create the rest of our pathway for what this platform can and should ultimately look like.
No, it seems incredibly, like from day one, that it's been incredibly client-centric. And then even to expound on that within their internal team that's really developed it. What's interesting to me as a question is, during that window of time, between then and now, COVID happened. which created enormous changes. And I'm wondering how the algorithm performed, or what some things you learned during that period of time as you thought about tuning it. Did it live up to its hype?
Sure. And it's, I'm glad you used the word tuning it. I think COVID was the most pivotal time for us in this project, simply because every theory, explanation, expectation, everything that we had got put to the test. Yeah. And just going back to what Hasham originally was talking about with supervised learning, I think the biggest differentiator at that point was there was no historical precedent. What we were very fortunate about, or fortunate with, was this was also the time that we were testing Aiden. So we had internal tests going with RBC's own capital and our own principal flow, as well as with a handful of beta clients who had agreed to test this out with us in late 2019, early 2020.
So you've launched a second algo now. Tell us a little bit about how that, what that is, one, and then two, how it's different from the original.
Sure. So let me take the first part. Maybe you can take the second one. So our latest algo that we launched yesterday is called Aiden Arrival Price.
Yeah. Okay.
So arrival price, I would say, is probably the most key benchmark, industry standard benchmark, that clients use to measure the quality of execution. Mm-hmm. Long story short, it's a comparison of the price at which a trader at the buy side sends an order into us, and the price at which it gets executed, right? So it's the comparison of those two things, and how optimally are you able to solve for that execution. So that's the second algo that we just launched, and we're really excited.
That's exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, talking about the research that went into it, thinking back to the VWAP model, we essentially had a single action head. What that means is it makes a single decision, right? And what we did over the years to make AP possible is expand on that. So all of a sudden now, AP can essentially control multiple aspects of the trading decisions. And on top of that, we came up with a holistic approach for evaluating the reward itself, the feedback itself.
Yeah.
And so it incorporates significantly more in terms of the trading experience when you're trading, and then also the experience immediately after you're done, to kind of give it feedback on impact and things like that as well.
We're looking at kind of this AI trading algorithmic industry, and we think about some of the bigger thematic things that we need to be in front of at RBC to remain competitive. Obviously, we've navigated those waters ahead of our competitors, but we need to stay ahead of them. What are some of those big themes? What are some of our clients, kind of asking for? Maybe not so much today, but as we think out, a little bit further into the future.
You want to take the themes?
Yep. So at a high level, when I think about where we were and where we are, we started off with big data. What we're seeing now is alternative data. Right? Everyone's trying to solve alternative data to get an edge. And so I think that theme is going to continue. I think we're going to continue to be looking at utilizing alternative data for these models. And in regards to deep neural networks, there's been tremendous progress from when we started to where we are now. There are things like transformers now in terms of architecture. And I think that trend is also going to continue. And what I imagine where we can be over the next little while is architectures that allow us to consume both structured data and also unstructured data, right? Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden now you can imagine if you're sourcing alternative data and they vary in shapes and sizes and representations, then a neural network architecture that can read both the unstructured part and also what you can typically consume normally, if you're able to do that, I think that will give you an edge in going into the future as well.
Yeah. Now, is this technology applicable to multiple other asset classes as we think about other opportunities for the bank?
So at a high level, if you think about reinforcement learning,
yeah,
right, it is taking an observation and then it's acting in the world, and the world responds to the actions, and that's how it learns. So when you frame it like that, the applications are very wide and many.
Yep. Okay.
But we are looking into other asset classes and other applications for this technology. I think it's pretty early, as you can well imagine. Other asset classes and their own complexities and their own challenges that we need to work through, and again, bring along all of the people, right? Our salespeople, our traders, everybody else from those asset classes, get their buy-in and do it properly. And we're really hoping, that in the next 12 to 18 months, we're able to break ground on that and make some progress. And who knows, maybe next year we'll be sitting across from you talking about that,
let's do
right?
it. We're happy to do it.